Okay, so overall, I think that I actually did a pretty good job with this paper. I was really excited to write it because I was so interested in the topic, and I learned a lot in the process of writing it, and I think that it is a pretty good paper overall. I also think that it is representative of my writing as a whole. I think that it's the best paper of the semester for me. I enjoyed writing it again. I think that it's fairly well written, and it's along the lines of the easiest type of writing for me personally, more research based than narrative or anything else. I definitely struggled with writing this paper. One of the things that I kept trying to do was going into first person. I kept writing it as if I were giving a speech or a presentation instead of writing a paper, so it was hard for me to get out of that habit. For example, this part, the music that one listens to has the potential to completely change how they experience life itself. I kept wanting to say things such as the music that we listen to, and then human emotion, and now how does music influence human emotion instead of our emotion? It was just hard for me to transition from that. I also struggled with wording, like I said, third person, and then there are some parts that I felt like just were worded in an odd way. For example, now how does music influence human emotion? Again, the human part was changed from first person, but also that just seems like an awkward sort of question to me. I am still working on that. And then the thing that I struggled with the most was the argument. So I emailed Professor Good, and I could not figure out how to change this from a research paper into a researched argument, but eventually we came up with a solution. So you can see in pink here, instead of just saying, hey, music influences our emotions, I said that music has more of an influence on our emotions than people realize. And then at the end here. I said that seeing music as purely amusing detracts from the full experience of listening to and creating it. If more people truly understood the extent of the impact that music has and can have on us, they could use it for the betterment of their daily lives and emotional well-being due to its cathartic, therapeutic, and emotion-regulating properties. So I feel like that's more of an argument than just saying music regulates our emotions or can help us regulate our emotions. Um, I didn't necessarily use a specific argumentative strategy that we talked about in class. I did try to acknowledge counter arguments. So this is at the very end of my paper. I talked about how some people overestimate the effects of music and think that it can control us, with the Marilyn Manson example, and then how some people underestimate it, with people who say that it is music education should not be included in schools. And then I also tried to delay my thesis until the very end of the paper, as I read earlier, which is sort of a Rogerian approach in a way. The strongest bit of my paper, I don't think it's a specific section necessarily. I just think that I have a lot of evidence backing up all of my claims. And then I also really enjoyed writing this part of my paper. It's probably the most bland part of my paper, but I felt like an intellectual writing it. So personally, I feel like that's the strongest part of my paper. The weakest part of my paper, I think, might be the end of it. I acknowledged counter arguments, so to say, but let me get there. It just seems like I was rushing through it. I only spent two small paragraphs on them, and I felt like I could have expounded upon that more, but my paper was lengthy already at that point. I'm not done with this paper yet. I have written everything and I have edited it mostly, but there's still some particular wording areas, and I'm trying to stay within academic discourse and not get into a more conversational tone with my paper, which is something that I struggle with also. But overall, I think I did a pretty good job.